Chapter 6. Corey cried out and spun out of the man's grasp. The man looked more startled than Corey. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." Corey stared at him, gasping for breath, his muscles tensed for a fight or for a fast escape. He was a tall, powerful-looking man, wearing a faded gray slicker and a battered old tennis hat. He had a dazed stubble of gray beard, and he smelled of stale cigarette smoke. "No need to be frightened," he said. He had a high-pitched voice for someone so big. Why'd you—" Corey was still too out of breath to talk. He backed up another few steps, relaxing a little, but still eyeing the man warily. "I saw you stop your car," the man said, pointing back in the direction of Corey's car. "I live down the street. I was walking Voltaire, that's my dog. I thought maybe you were lost or in trouble, so I came after you." "Where's your dog?" Corey asked suspiciously. The man frowned, seemingly annoyed by Corey's mistrust. "Voltaire doesn't like strangers," he said slowly. "He's very protective of his turf. I put him back in the house before I came to see if you needed help." Corey was beginning to breathe normally again, but he knew he couldn't relax his guard. There was something strange about this neighbor, not just his appearance, but in his menacing stare, the way he kept looking Corey up and down, his face tight, expressionless. "Car break down?" the man asked. "No," Corey said. "Then what are you doing out here? You lost?" "Not exactly. I was looking for the Corwins." "You found them," the man said, gesturing with his head toward the dark house. "You know them?" "Well, not really. They're strange people. I wouldn't go up there uninvited, I don't think." The man scratched at his stubble. "What do you mean?" Corey shivered. He'd never felt so chilled in his life. "Just that." "Oh." They stood staring at each other for a long moment. "They keep to themselves mostly," the man said. He put his hands in his slicker pockets and turned back toward the street. "If you're not lost or anything, guess I'll head back." No, I'm fine, thanks," Corey said uncertainly. He looked up to the Corwin house. A light flickered on in an upstairs window. So, someone was home after all. "They're pretty strange folks," the man repeated, walking quickly now. He turned around. "Of course, everyone's pretty strange on Fear Street." He chuckled as if he had just made a really good joke, and slipped off into the darkness. Corey waited to make sure the man was really gone. Then he turned and headed slowly toward the car. He stopped and looked back to the house. The light was still on in the second-floor room. Should he go up and knock on the door? He'd come this far. Why not be brave? Why not just do it? Act now, think later. Why did he always have to go back and forth, think things out so carefully before he acted? Besides, he'd have something good to tell David about later. He imagined how his friend would make fun of him if he told him he just stood at the end of the drive and stared at the house. He'd probably hear about it for weeks. The jokes would never stop. "Okay, Corey, go for it." He began jogging up the Corwin's driveway. He jogged partly to get warm, partly because he knew he'd never go through with it if he didn't do it quickly. A gymnast has to learn to be aggressive, he told himself. He has to grab onto the rings and push himself where his body normally wouldn't go. As a gymnast, Corey was quick and sure. But this wasn't gymnastics. This was life. He jumped up onto the front porch, dodged past the overturned chair, slid on some long carpenter nails that were scattered over the porch floor, and nearly crashed right into the front door. He steadied himself, leaning against the shingled front of the house, located the doorbell, and, without hesitating, without giving himself a chance to back down, pushed it hard. He didn't hear it ring inside the house. He pushed it again. He straightened his sweatshirt and pushed back his hair with one hand. The bell didn't make a sound. It must be broken. He knocked, lightly at first, then harder. Silence. He cleared his throat, practiced a smile. He knocked again. This time he heard footsteps, someone hurrying down a stairway. The door opened a crack. No light poured out. The house was dark inside. An eye stared out at Corey. The door opened a little wider. Two eyes stared suspiciously out. The porch light flickered on, casting a pale yellow glow on the porch and front lawn. A young man stood in the doorway. He had a very round face with puffy, round cheeks. His blue eyes were small and watery and set close to his bulby, round nose. Despite the fact that he appeared to be quite young, in his early 20s most likely, his blond hair was thinning, revealing a lot of forehead. It was tossed messily over his head. A rhinestone earring sparkled in one ear. He stared at Corey for a long time without saying anything. Corey stared back uncomfortably. Finally, he said, "Hi, I'm Corey Brooks. Is Anna home?" The young man's watery eyes grew wide. His mouth twitched once in surprise. "Anna? What do you know about Anna?" His voice was raspy, as if he had a bad sore throat. I go to Shadyside too." "Shadyside? What's Shadyside?" the young man said, and then coughed for a long time, holding tightly on to the front door, a wheezing smoker's cough. "It's the high school," Corey said when the young man had finally stopped coughing. "I met Anna in school this week, and—" "That's impossible," the man interrupted. Hitting the door frame with his fist, he glared at Corey. His eyes seemed to glow red in the porch light. "No, really, "You didn't meet Anna in school. Anna isn't in school." "Yes, she is," Corey insisted. "You the one who called?" "Well, yeah, "Anna is dead," the young man rasped. "Don't come here again. Anna is dead." Chapter 7. He didn't remember driving home. He remembered staring into the young man's watery eyes. He remembered the long, awkward silence, the pain on the young man's face. He remembered the words. They repeated in his head over and over, like a record stuck in the same groove. "Anna is dead. Anna is dead." He remembered uttering some kind of apology. Sorry. That was it. That was all he could say. Sorry. How stupid. How meaningless. But what else could he say? Then he remembered the scowl on the young man's puffy face, the shadows closing over him as the front door slammed shut. And Corey remembered running to his car, running to safety with the words following him. Anna is dead. Anna is dead. He couldn't run fast enough to leave the words behind. He remembered the chill, wet air on his face, the crunch of dry brown leaves beneath his sneakers, the sharp twig that cut his ankle as he ran. Stay away from Fear Street, he told himself. What were you doing on Fear Street so late at night? The stories are all true, and now you are one of them. He remembered how his hands trembled as he tried to get the key into the ignition, and he remembered his panic when the car wouldn't start. Then the motor had kicked over and he had sped away, his hands gripping the wheel as if it were a lifesaver in a storm-tossed ocean. But he didn't remember the drive home. It was a blur of swirling yellow headlights and black roads, and he didn't remember sneaking back into the house, or silently tiptoeing up the stairs to his room, or getting undressed and climbing into bed. He just remembered the young man's narrow, watery eyes, the pain in those eyes, pain mixed with hatred, and the words, "Anna is dead. Anna is dead." He didn't fall asleep until after 4 in the morning, and then it was a light sleep, a fitful sleep filled with floating faces he didn't recognize, and tilting car headlights that sometimes seemed to be heading right at him, and sometimes seemed to shine right through him. On Monday morning he skipped breakfast and hurried to school to look for Anna. He got there early, 20 minutes before the first bell would ring. He waited by her locker. There were a few other kids down the hall. They seemed to be yawning at each other, leaning against their lockers as if they would fall over if they didn't. He tried opening Anna's locker, but the combination lock wouldn't budge. He sat cross-legged on the floor and waited. After a while, the corridor became noisy and crowded as kids arrived. Some of them said hi to Corey as they walked past. "What are you doing down there, Brooks?" Arnie asked as he lumbered through the door. "Just sitting," Corey told him. The answer seemed to be enough for Arnie. He swung his book bag at Corey, trying to knock him over. Corey dodged away. Arnie laughed and stomped down the hall. "Where is Anna?" "Anna is dead. Anna is a ghost. But there are no such things as ghosts. Her locker was real." He spun the dial and pulled at the lock again. The bell rang. He climbed to his feet. He felt as if he weighed 400 pounds. He hadn't been able to sleep for 2 nights in a row. The hallway was emptying quickly. Kids were hurrying to their homerooms. He had to hurry too. He had already been late twice this term, and he didn't want to get a detention. But where was Anna? She wasn't coming today. Of course she wasn't coming. Anna was dead. But he had seen her with his own eyes. He had talked to her. He made it to homeroom just as the bell rang. The rest of the morning was a struggle to keep his eyes open. Luckily, none of his teachers called on him in any of his classes. In fact, no one seemed to notice he was there. Maybe I'm becoming a ghost too, he told himself. He looked for Anna in the hallway between classes, but he didn't see her. Just before lunch, he ran into Lisa as they were depositing their book bags in their lockers. "Was Anna Corwin in physics this morning?" he asked her eagerly. "Good morning to you, too," Lisa said sarcastically. "Oh, sorry. Good morning, Lisa. Was Anna Corwin in physics this morning?" She angrily slammed her locker shut. "No." "Oh." Corey tossed his book bag into his locker. He didn't see the annoyed look on Lisa's face. "Then I guess she was absent." "You're a real Sherlock Holmes," Lisa said, shaking her head. She jammed the lock shut and started to walk away, but then she changed her mind and came back to the locker. "What's your problem, anyway?" "Problem? How did Lisa know he had a problem?" "Why are you acting so weird?" "I'm not acting weird. He started to make some excuse, but then he decided to tell her. He had to tell someone, and she was his oldest friend after all. As they walked down to the lunchroom, he told her about the rest of his Saturday night. He told her how he drove to Fear Street, how he knocked on the door, how the strange-looking young man told him Anna was dead. Lisa listened to the story in silence, her face drawn in a tight frown of disapproval. But when Corey finished talking, the anger disappeared, replaced by concern. "Something's wrong here," she said softly, following him into the lunch line. "A lot is wrong here," Corey exclaimed. "I just can't stop thinking about—" "I think you got the wrong house," she interrupted. She smiled, pleased with her idea. "What are you talking about?" "That's it. You got the wrong house. You woke this guy up, so he decided to play a mean joke on you." Lisa watched for Corey's face to brighten, waited for him to realize that her theory was a good one. But his only reaction was a weary sigh. "Get real," he muttered gloomily. "I didn't have the wrong house." "You don't know for sure," she insisted, although she could see that this theory wasn't going over. To go over. "What do you think you were doing anyway?" she asked, poking him in the ribs, the way she'd been doing it since they were kids. "Why are you driving to this girl's house in the middle of the night? Why are you looking for her all day? Why are you so obsessed with Anna Corwin? There are other girls in the world, you know." He didn't say anything. He seems to be staring right past her. "Corey, did you hear a word I said?" "Yeah, sure," he answered quickly, still not looking at her. "You said the guy in the doorway was playing a mean joke on me." "Anna is dead. Some joke." "Bye, Corey." She gave him an exaggerated handshake and started to leave. "What about lunch?" he called after her. "I'm not hungry anymore. Hey, you want to walk home after school?" "Can't," he called to her. "Monday's the day I work in the office." A lot of kids did clerical work after school in the office. The pay wasn't too bad, and the work was easy, mostly dittoing and filing. He watched her make her way through the crowded lunchroom to the double doors that led to the hall. Why had she accused him of acting weird? She'd been acting pretty weird himself, he decided. So temperamental, always so angry at him. Why? What had he done to her? Suddenly, an idea formed in his head. The office. Of course. Why hadn't he thought of it before? The office. After school, in the office, he would be able to answer all his questions. He got out of the lunch line and started toward the door. He decided to go outside and get some air, maybe walk a bit. He wasn't feeling hungry either. Corey's fingers were purple. They always were after he used the ditto machine, and the purple stayed on for days. Why does school still use these ridiculous old-fashioned machines, he wondered. You never saw ditto machines anywhere else but in schools. He finished dittoing the announcement about the faculty blood drive. He had one other ditto to run off before his office chores were finished. Moving more quietly and sneakily than he really needed to, he made his way to the door of the inner office and peered in. The room was empty. He had overheard that Mr. Sewall, the principal, had left early with a toothache, and one of the secretaries was out sick. That left only Miss Markins, who was busily typing away in the outer reception area. The coast was clear, and would probably stay clear. He slipped into the inner office and pulled the door nearly shut. His hand went for the light switch, but then he realized it might be a bad idea. Miss Markins was sure to notice it. He crept over to the principal's desk in the center of the small office. Framed photographs of Mr. Sewall's two sons seemed to stare at him disapprovingly. Corey walked silently around the desk to get to the object of his search. Against the back wall were the gray filing cabinets. They contained the permanent records of every student at Shadyside. These were the sacred permanent records, the secret files that could make you a success in the world, or destroy your life forever. At least, that's what most Shadyside High students were led to believe. "I'm sorry, but this will have to go in your permanent record. If a teacher or Mr. Sewall ever said that to you, you knew you were doomed forever." Whatever it was, whatever crime you had committed, whatever error you had made would follow you for the rest of your life. There it would be, in your permanent record. Corey ran his hand over the first row of file drawers, quickly scanning the little identification cards on the front. Just being in the same room with the permanent records made him nervous. The fact that he had no business in there and that he'd have to do some fast explaining if he was caught made him so nervous he could barely read the ID cards. He stopped his search for a second, held his breath, and listened. Miss Markins was still typing away. He allowed himself to breathe once again. I can't believe I'm doing this. What am I doing in here? He asked himself, stooping low and pulling out a long file drawer on the bottom row. He knew the answer to that question. He was going to take a look at Anna Corwin's permanent record. He was going to find out the truth about her. He was going to find out everything he could about her. His fingers sifted quickly through the files. He knew this wasn't right. He knew it was crazy behavior. He knew he never did things like this. At least, before Anna, he never did things like this. Footsteps. He took a deep breath. He listened for her typing, but it had stopped. He dived under Mr. Sewall's desk just as she entered the room. Safe, he told himself. Or was he? Had she heard him in there? He almost cried out. He had left the file drawer open. If she saw it, she'd know he'd been in there. She stood behind the desk. Her legs were 3 inches from his face. For a second, he imagined reaching out and grabbing her knees, just to see how loud she'd scream. Just for a laugh. A fast laugh before they took him away, suspended him forever, put it all on his permanent record. He held his breath. It seemed as if he'd been holding it ever since he sneaked into this office. She was leaning over the desk, writing something, leaving a note for Mr. Sewall most likely. I can't believe I'm sitting here under Mr. Sewall's desk, he told himself silently, but Anna's face flashed into his mind again, and he heard the words of the strange young man at the doorway of her house, and he remembered why he was there. Miss Markins finished her note and walked out of the office without noticing the open file drawer. As soon as he heard her resume her typing, Corey darted out from under the desk and returned to the file drawer, moving his hands quickly through the C's. What would Anna's file tell him? What truths would it reveal about this beautiful girl who had so completely taken over his thoughts? Cornerman. His hands moved quickly, pushing the files back. At last. Cornwall, Corwood, Corwith. Wait a minute. He went back through the last 5 or 6. Then he moved forward 9 or 10 more. He hadn't missed any, and none of them were filed out of order. The files went from Cornwall to Corwood. There was no file for anyone named Anna Corwin. Chapter 8. Timber! Look at that guy go down! Arnie's voice boomed over the cheers of the crowd. He's too tall, David cried. He's 7 feet tall, and he's just a freshman. He's still growing, Arnie added. They looked over at Corey, who was staring straight across the gymnasium. Hey, Brooks! Earth calling Brooks! David shouted right in his ear, but Corey didn't respond. The Shadyside cheerleaders did a quick routine during the timeout. Then the basketball game resumed. It wasn't much of a game. Westerville, with its 7-foot freshman center, was running the Shadyside Cougars off the floor. They have only one play. Toss it to the big guy, David observed. I'd like to toss it to that cheerleader on the end, Arnie shouted, loud enough for half the auditorium to hear. Oh man, what a fox! David and Arnie both waited for Corey to add his opinion, but he didn't say anything. He looked at them as if seeing them for the first time. Good game, huh? He said, forcing a smile. What game are you watching? Arnie snapped. We're losing by 20 points. And the game isn't as close as the score, David added. He and Arnie burst into riotous laughter, slapping each other high fives. The weak, forced smile faded from Corey's face. He turned and started surveying the auditorium again. You're a lot of laughs these days, Brooks, Arnie said, reaching across David to punch Corey as hard as he could on the shoulder. Oh, I'm going down to get a Coke. He pushed his way down the aisle and disappeared around the side of the bleachers. You feeling okay? David asked. He had to ask it twice before Corey heard him. Yeah, fine. Well, how come you missed practice this afternoon? I don't know. Just forgot, I guess. Wellner was furious. That's the second practice you missed this week, Corey, and the Friday practice is the most important, especially since we have a meet tomorrow. I know, Corey said, sounding annoyed. Give me some slack, David. You're not my mother. Hey, David looked really hurt. I'm your teammate, aren't I? I'm your friend, aren't I? So? So, you tell me, what's your problem, Brooks? Oh, nothing. Just... The crowd roared. All around them, people jumped to their feet. Something had obviously gone Shadyside's way, but David and Corey had missed it. The cheerleaders came back on the floor. The bleachers were shaking under the deafening noise. Corey looked to the scoreboard. The Cougars were only behind by 15 now. That must explain the excitement. It's that blonde girl, isn't it? David said when it became quiet enough to talk. I guess, Corey shrugged. He didn't really want to get into any big discussion with David. He felt bad. He really had forgotten about gymnastics practice. How is that possible? Was he really losing his mind over this girl? You going out with her? David asked. I haven't seen her, Corey said, looking across the basketball floor. What? You heard me. I haven't seen her all week. I looked for her every day, but she hasn't been in school. And that's why you're acting like a zombie? Get off my case, Metcalf, Corey scowled. You're screwing up your gymnastics rating because of a girl you don't know that you haven't seen. Well, that makes sense to me. Corey didn't say anything. Then he suddenly blurted out, I don't even know if she exists. He regretted saying it immediately. It didn't make any sense, and he knew it, and now he had given David even more of an opportunity to put him down and give him a hard time. But to Corey's surprise, David reacted with real concern. What do you mean, Brooks? You told me you saw her more than once. You told me you talked to her. You told me she's in Lisa's physics class. You told me all this stuff about her because that's all you talk about these days. So what do you mean she doesn't exist? I work after school in the office on Mondays. You know. So Monday afternoon, I went into the permanent files and looked her up. There is no file for her. David looked shocked, but not for the same reason Corey imagined. You can get into the files? He cried. Great. What does mine say about me? I didn't. I'll give you $10 to look at my file. Better than that, I'll pay you back the $10 I owe you. No deal, Corey said disgustedly. You don't understand. I went to her house last week, and this guy said... The crowd groaned. Loud boos echoed off the tile walls. Corey's eyes caught the scoreboard. Shadyside was losing by 22. Arnie pushed his way back into the row and plopped down beside David. That guy's too tall, he said. He had spilled Coke down the front of his sweatshirt. They've got to raise the baskets. Or lower the floor, David said, and they both began to howl. Corey stood up. Guess I'm going, he told them. This is a drag. You're a drag, Arnie said, grinning. She's a transfer student, isn't she? David said, pulling Corey back down to the bench. Yeah? Well, maybe her file hasn't been sent over from her other school yet. David was smart. Maybe he was right, but Corey didn't really believe it. It was November already. How long did it take to transfer files? Is he talking about that weird blonde girl again? Arnie boomed, leaning over David to shout right in Corey's face. What have you been doing to her? He leered. Must be pretty good or you wouldn't be missing practice so much. Arnie laughed as if he had just said the funniest thing ever spoken. Corey just shook his head wearily. He realized he must seem pretty weird to his two friends. He seemed pretty weird to himself. He'd never been haunted by someone this way before. He'd never had anything that he couldn't shut out of his mind, that he couldn't force himself to stop thinking about. He'd always been in control of his thoughts, and now, was he out of control? See you guys later, he said, and quickly headed the other way down the row so they couldn't pull him back. The crowd groaned, then groaned again. The small contingent of Westerville fans across the floor was cheering wildly. It looked like a bad night for the Cougars. A bad night for everyone, Corey thought. He had searched the bleachers row by row for Anna, but she wasn't there. He climbed into his car, shivering against the chill. After 3 tries, he got it started. He drove around aimlessly for a while, heading down Park Drive, then across Hawthorne to Mill Road. The streets were empty. Most houses were already dark. He turned on the radio, but no one was playing any music he liked, so he clicked it off. He realized he was very tired. He hadn't slept well all week. He spun the car around and headed for home. He was asleep when the ringing phone woke him. He squinted at his alarm clock. It was 1:30 in the morning. His hands knocked the receiver off the phone. He fumbled around until he grabbed it up. Hello? Stay away from Anna. What? The voice on the other end was a hoarse whisper, so quiet he could barely make out the words. Stay away from Anna, the strange voice whispered, slowly and distinctly, each word filled with menace. She's dead. She's a dead girl. Stay away from her, or you'll be next.